Welcome to All Church Sunday School. We are back again. There's my friend and colleague, trusted colleague, Shannon Moore.
We're together again.
I
missed you, but it sounds like you had a great time on the service learning trip.
It was an amazing experience. And when those middle schoolers were working in the Target Hunger warehouse, they were in the zone.
That's
it was
great.
Really fun.
I love it.
To see them so focused.
And I'm glad they got to spend some time with you and with the senior minister.
I know. I think that was very novel. And the senior minister is very talented at mission trips with young people.
Yeah.
The thing he does the best is lead games.
I saw some videos of some of his antics, and he looked great.
He was fun. A man of many talents. Would you like to volunteer to go on a middle school mission trip?
What are we looking at today?
We are in chapter 4 of the letter of James. I hope you have been with us for this conversation. So far, give us a little feel for what you think you've learned or been reminded of in the first 3 chapters.
Just the practicality of a lot of what James is saying to me seems like good old-fashioned common sense.
Like something if your grandparent would tell you.
Yes.
And here's what you need to know. Here's what's important in life. Yes.
And that, Jesus is on our side. He's taught us what to do. If we ask for help,
yes,
it comes, and to be wise and to be smart and kind. And
so are you always willing to ask for help right off the bat, or do you try to make it work yourself and then ask for help?
I am
from God.
I think I kind of do it backwards. I tend to go heavy on gratitude when things are going well. And then when things are going poorly, I sort of take I'm going to fix this.
That's
kind of backwards.
That's good self-awareness.
But I'm trying to do better. I think I shared with you a few weeks ago, I was dealing with a problem, and my spiritual director said, "Have you prayed about this?" And I said, "Well, no.
There's no time for that.
Why would I do that?" So
I think it's
a good reminder.
Good for all of us. I love the conversations we've been having where we just get to unpack. I'm not very good at that, and I need to try harder. And I think we get the chance to be present in each other's lives when we speak up and when we unpack what we're not good at. And so
I have noticed, however, that James is constantly turning the heat up on the oven.
Yep.
And as we move into chapter 4,
that's right.
It goes to high today.
He isn't ever indecisive. Mm-mm. It's sharp, and it's, what are you thinking? What were you thinking? I almost feel like the volume goes up sometimes with him too.
But I love chapter 4.
Okay, good. It's very interesting. And one of the things that I noticed as I was getting ready for our conversation today is these are like little Post-it notes of wisdom, little gems, and there'll be a little, like reading the book of Proverbs. Mm-hmm. So it's not a long, continual reading.
You can pull things out.
Yes. So
and it doesn't always. Sometimes when you do that, you take something out of context, and it ruins. It doesn't fit anymore.
Yes.
But a lot of this you can pull out of context, and it still is applicable.
And put it, on a Post-it on the mirror and look at it when you're getting ready in the morning.
Indeed.
Do you ever do that?
Indeed.
So look at this picture, and I want you to tell me. This is kind of to help us imagine what we're just about to talk about. Which one is you and which one is me?
Depends on the day. Today, I definitely have my hands over my eyes.
And I'm saying, listen. So would you read the first 6 verses, and let's talk about fighting and quarreling.
Absolutely. Where do all the fights and quarrels among you come from? They come from your desires for pleasure, which are constantly fighting within you. You want things, but you cannot have them. So you are ready to kill. You strongly desire things, but you cannot get them, so you quarrel and fight. You do not have what you want, because you do not ask God for it. And when you ask, you do not receive it, because your motives are bad. You ask for things to use for your own pleasures. Unfaithful people, don't you know that to be the world's friend means to be God's enemy? If you want to be the world's friend, you make yourself God's enemy. Don't think that there is no truth in the Scripture that says the Spirit that God placed in us is filled with fierce desires. But the grace that God gives is even stronger. As the Scripture says, God resists the proud, but gives grace to the humble.
So look back at verse 2.
Okay.
What does James suggest is the reason for all of the squabbling that happens between us?
Jealousy.
You want things, you cannot have them. Strongly desire things, cannot get them, and that's why we quarrel and fight. And of course he's addressing a faith community and the tug of war that goes on. Even among church leaders or in a Sunday school class, we all want to have our way. Mm-hmm. We all have an agenda that we're working. Do you think that's...
I don't know anything about that. I mean, look at what's going on in our country. I don't think anybody wants their own way.
Oh my gosh, we're all just so determined to have our own way. I love the last part. God resists the proud, but gives grace to the humble. And we're going to talk about humility in just a minute. So,
what about this God's enemy part?
If you are a friend of the world, you are God's enemy. I guess we need to understand what James meant by the world. He probably meant the flesh, the
other
human condition,
other people, other people's opinions. I mean, if we're constantly searching for approval from other people, then we don't have time to be focusing on our relationship with God.
Because it is possible to put a lot of energy into what other people, trying to manage how other people see us.
I wouldn't know anything about that either.
I don't think there's much truth coming out of you today, but we'll see as we're talking about quarrels among folks in the church. I found this list from Church Leadership Magazine.
Okay.
That I am curious to hear your reaction to. 10 ways to handle conflict in a healthy way. And when we were talking just recently about don't be ugly.
Don't be ugly. Don't act ugly.
Don't
Let's
act
not be
ugly.
Mm-hmm.
So here's a contemporary list of ways that we can manage some of the fighting and quarreling that goes on between people in the church.
Okay.
Number 1, understand.
If you were like David Letterman, you'd read them backwards.
But
that's okay.
Okay.
But we'll do it
the
your
top
way.
10 list of ways to handle conflict. All right. Think about James's advice to us, and think about this list. 1, understand the real source of conflict. Do you ever find yourself in an argument where the problem isn't the problem? What is it, the saying that Russ has?
The issue's never the issue.
The issue's never the issue. That's what this is about.
I think that's dead on.
There's
Very
something
often,
deeper and more significant, and this is just a little surface squabble.
Right. It was the final, the straw that broke the camel's back. There were a lot of other straws. This was just the one that's
causing this particular. Yeah. So what is the real source of the conflict? Probably hard in the middle of our conversation to be that reflective. But as we think about a recent squabble, we could go, what's the real problem here? Mm-hmm. And what's this thing that's not the real problem? All right. Number 2. Find the right time and place. Don't squabble when you're tired, when you're stressed, in a public place like a restaurant. Mm-hmm. Right? What else are you thinking that connects with number 2?
In a way, I feel like number 2 is a way to avoid conflict. You could take it too far and say, well, there just wasn't the time or the place to. That I think I might be guilty of that.
So if I called you up and I said, we didn't get a chance to talk at lunch about XYZ, but I want to talk about it now. Wouldn't that make you just anxious and you would say, no, Renee, I'm too busy?
I'm very busy today.
I don't have time. I'm in the weeds. Sorry
But
about that.
But I do understand this, having the right mindset that we're being intentional about this conversation. We're not going to do it in front of other people. We're not going to make a spectacle.
And we're not going to try to wrap it up in 2 minutes when we really need enough time
Yes.
to listen to each other. Listening is important. I don't know if we're going to get to that in a minute. Examine yourself first. Very important, and that's going to come up again when we talk about humility. Consider the other person's side. Always important. Do not overreact to the issue or overload on emotion.
I think if we do the first 4, then we'll be in a good place not to overload on emotion. It's when we speak in the heat of the moment, when we're not slow to speak, when we're quick to anger, that we overload on emotion and say things that we don't intend.
Quick to listen, slow to speak, slow to anger. So go back to chapter 1, and all of these so far align themselves with James' advice in chapter 1. All right, do not dance around or sugarcoat the issue or disguise it in false kindness. Bless your heart.
You were doing the best you could. But
there's always, yes, those compliments where you always know the word but is just about to be inserted because something's coming in right after the kindness. Somebody's going to get you.
Yeah.
Number 7, do not allow the small disagreements to become big disagreements. Don't put it off. Number 8, be firm but gentle. That takes great skill.
That's a nuance.
Yeah.
That's something that has to be practiced and worked on.
I know lots of people who have one or the other of those.
But at the same time,
that's a tall order. Number 9, make getting to the right decision the ultimate goal.
That's going to go back to number 3 and 4, where you have to examine your own motives and the other person's. Who says what's right?
Really, really brutally honest with yourself. And 10, grant grace and forgiveness easily.
That's
plenty of grace and forgiveness. Don't make people work hard to get your forgiveness.
And once we forgive,
then
truly forgive.
Really forgive. Not pretend forgiveness. Now, I want you to see this picture, Shannon. What do you think about those two boys? I just love that picture. And it's in black and white, so it looks more retro. And it's almost like the one with his finger pointed is going, "You did it," and the other one's going, "Who, me?"
Again, which one is you and which one is me?
You're going to always make the finger. There was finger pointing in the last picture we looked at too. You're going to always make me the finger pointer, and people are going to have the wrong impression of me. All right, let's look at 7 through 10.
Okay.
In chapter 4. Will you read it for us?
Certainly. So then, submit yourselves to God. Resist the devil, and he will run away from you. Come near to God, and he will come near to you. Wash your hands, you sinners. Purify your hearts, you hypocrites. Be sorrowful, cry and weep. Change your laughter into crying, your joy into gloom. Humble yourselves before the Lord, and he will lift you up.
Tell me what you think of that. Have you ever seen the devil run away from you? I just think I don't feel I don't know what to do with that sentence.
I don't either.
Maybe there's not an answer to it. So this purity that James is talking about, your hands are clean, your hearts are pure, just to be who you are honestly and truthfully.
Is that what you see the lament and mourn and weep is telling us, that when we feel that way, to feel that, to let it out, not hold it in? Is that what you think?
Come near to God, and he will come near to you. Wash your hands, sinners. Purify your hearts, hypocrites. It's just to jettison out of you whatever is getting in the way of your relationship with God. Find a way to identify it so that you can remove it.
That makes sense. To feel,
What do you think?
I think that's right. And at first you hear in verse 9 to lament and mourn and weep. That sounds not great. Why would I want to do that? But I do think it could have to do with feeling your feelings, expressing, recognizing, examining oneself. What is it I'm feeling? Getting it out, being honest with ourselves. And
So it's a confessional posture,
because
right?
God knows already. Yes.
Confess. Claim your stuff. Be honest. Ask God to forgive you. You have to pass through that before you get to the person who is pure and clean and full of joy. Mm-hmm. Let God be the one. Once you get to humility, God will be the one who lifts you up once you can confess.
And again, we're not relying on other people to
Right.
lift us up. We're not looking for approval from other people.
This
It's
is
God's lifting up that we're searching for.
See, I think that's a good. Well, so much teaching about humility. I thought I would look for what do we know about humility. I wanted to look at an ancient philosophical understanding of humility, and then I'll tell you what I found describing Christianity and its approach to humility, and then we'll look at modern psychology.
You did a deep dive
I was
on humility.
I'm always interested. Humility is an amazingly powerful thing.
I want to hear what this says.
All right, so first we're going to hear from Confucius.
Okay.
Will you read it? Mm-hmm. And there's a picture of him.
Humility is a core value in many ancient ethical and theological frameworks. The Confucian form of humility, for example, is profoundly other-oriented in spirit, consistently valuing the social good over the satisfaction of our individual aspirations. Social good over individual aspirations. I like that. In this ancient Chinese form, humility can significantly enhance social cohesion and our sense of belonging.
So that seems powerful, doesn't it?
It does.
Valuing the social good over individual aspiration.
That, again, is something that takes a lot of hard work and discipline.
Sort of getting yourself out of the way to see the big picture. It's not all about
Not
me.
all about me.
I think that's a word for our culture today. All right, now we're going to Socrates. Look at him. Isn't he handsome? Socrates, that's not his name. You're messing up my exposition on humility. Go ahead, read, and try to pronounce it correctly.
I'll be fancy. The Greek philosopher Socrates held that wisdom is above all knowing that we don't know. He taught an intellectual form of humility that freely acknowledges the gaps in our knowledge and that humbly speaks to address our blind spots.
Wisdom is above all knowing what we don't know. My dad used to tell me that. And the smarter how did my dad used to say it? The smartest day in your life will be the day that you really understand what you don't know. Mm-hmm. And it seemed like kind of a puzzle he was saying to me. But did my dad know about that this was from Socrates, or was that just my dad's wisdom? This made me, as I found this, made me remember how many times my dad, as I was getting older and confessing to him something that I'd messed up, he'd go, the more you understand what you don't know, the wiser you are.
I agree with that.
And humility has us just not say that we're worthless, but just shrink ourselves up a little bit. There's a lot about this world that I don't know, that I can't do well, that I don't understand.
I had a friend one time, and she was at a conference, and they were talking about knowledge. And the conference leader asked, "How much do you think you know of everything there is to know? Like, what percentage?" And so she's sitting there and she's thinking, well, I'm educated and I'm pretty intelligent. 13%.
Wow.
And turned it in. So she got home that night and she asked her husband, "How much of everything there is to know do you think you know?" And he said, 0.0000006. And she said, they're going to think I'm an idiot.
Oh my gosh. I was going to say 0.3 1%, but now I think that's way too high. Now let's turn to Aristotle.
Okay.
And you will notice in that picture, it looks like his nose got broken off the statue.
Oh, it does.
And then they glued it back on.
I wonder what they used.
I bet it was,
Elmer's?
or maybe Gorilla Glue. Special Gorilla Glue. It does look like it's damaged, doesn't it?
It does. I think they could have done a better
Somebody
job. Oh,
popped him in the nose.
Now
Okay.
I'm being judgmental.
So now let's think about, here's one more way of humility being taught by Aristotle.
Okay. Aristotle understood humility as a mortal virtue, sandwiched between the vices of arrogance and moral weakness. Like Socrates, he believed that humility must include accurate self-knowledge and a generous acknowledgement of the qualities of others that avoids distortion and extremes. That's a heavy sentence.
And those distortions and extremes, think about the polarizing impact of our divided country politically and social media. And that just exists by painting the picture of someone in the extreme, saying they have evil motives, blowing a small sentence that they spoke into something much bigger than, we are really all about distortion and extremes, which keeps us from being humble, and keeps us from being generous. If we're always trying to paint the opposing person as the bad guy.
Right. And jumping to the worst possible.
Yes.
This bit about extremes is very important because we tend to jump to the worst possible extreme, the worst case scenario, very quickly. We go from A to Z in the blink of an eye.
And it seems like at times now we're looking for some little a word that's a signal. This person's on the other side. This person doesn't see the world like I do. Then we infuse into that person everything we don't like about society today. We're easily triggered, and when we're triggered, we're all about distortion and extremes.
Yes.
Aristotle would not like to live in the United States right now. He would be out on the corner saying, "What's the matter with you people?"
And holding on to his nose.
So it doesn't fall off again. All right, so we've talked about ancient teaching on humility. We listened to James lift up humility as so central to walking with God, and then we heard from Confucius, we heard from Socrates, and we heard from Aristotle. Now, what does contemporary psychology say about humility? Oh, let me stop here and first tell you what, in the same source where I was reading all these lessons on humility, the Christian paragraph, the paragraph about Christianity and humility, taught that it was Christian teaching to see humanity as really devoid of goodness. I didn't agree with what was said, that the way to be humble was to think of yourself as worthless, as of no,
But I think a good bit of Christianity does teach that. That's how I was raised. I'm nothing. I'm horrible. I'm awful.
Any attempt to have goodness or gifts to share, that was all tamped down because you needed to be. It was like a doormat.
Right. And I don't think that's what James is going for, what God's going
Right.
for.
But you would agree that Christianity sometimes presses down the value of an individual.
Yep.
And you had people in your life who encouraged you to not think too highly of yourself.
I think so. I mean, maybe that's a Southern thing too. But I remember one of my friends sang a solo in church one time when he was young, and somebody after church told him that he did a good job, and he said, "I know," and his mother popped him. She said, "You don't do that."
That's not right.
I know.
That is not right. Don't be ugly.
He was getting too
big for his britches.
Mm-hmm.
Did you have that expression growing up?
Oh, yeah.
Got to watch that when your britches are getting tight. All right. Now, so modern psychology offers these aspects of humility. See what you think. Read the list for us.
While other-orientedness is a core interpersonal feature of humility, Tangney has identified 6 intrapersonal aspects of humility: a willingness to see others truthfully, an accurate perception of our place in the world, an ability to acknowledge our mistakes and limitations, openness, low self-focus, and an appreciation of the value of all things.
So look at that low self-focus. I stopped and thought about that for a while I was creating this slide. Not saying that you're worthless, but not being so caught up in yourself.
That's the dancing on the edge of the razor blade. I mean, it's
low self-focus, and I think that that list would just be a great thing to practice, wouldn't it? Isn't that
especially the
core?
Perception of our place in the world, acknowledging our limitations and mistakes? All of that is so important. And
so we can acknowledge our mistakes and limitations and still have a good sense of self-worth. We just get where we're incomplete,
right,
and what we can't do well, and we're open to the other.
I like this.
And low self-focus. I just think that's a great list. And all of this coming as lessons in humility, power of humility, and James telling us, pay more attention to that.
And at the bottom here, it says it refers to humility as a quiet ego.
That's good too, isn't it?
That's good stuff.
Yeah. I'm going to put this in a frame and give it to you for Christmas.
Okay.
This is good. All right. Now back to James.
Okay. Thank you for the deep dive. I enjoyed that.
Good. You're welcome. I was hoping that wasn't going to be too much information. No. All right. Back to James 11 and 12.
Okay. Do not criticize one another, my friends. If you criticize or judge another Christian, you criticize and judge the law, capital L. If you judge the law, then you are no longer one who obeys the law, but one who judges it. God is the only lawgiver and judge. God alone can save and destroy. Who do you think you are to judge someone else?
You are not the boss of me. Because God is.
Right.
But if you criticize or judge another Christian, you criticize and judge the law. Meaning the law of Moses? Is that how you're understanding?
Well, your translation capitalizes law, so that would make me think yes. My translation does not. So,
and mine doesn't. And this one that I'm looking at, which this is NRSV. That's what
I've
you're
got.
reading too.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so law without a capital L. God is the only lawgiver and judge. God alone can save and destroy. Who do you think you are?
That's the big question. And whether it's the law or any kind of law, I think the point is that God is the focus, not other people, not any man-made stuff. It's just our focus should be on God. It's God who saves. It's God who judges. Not us.
Not us. So you would practice, I'm going back to our most recent list, an accurate perception of your place in the world, which means you are not the boss. Go away.
Not
Leave
in control.
Me alone.
I
started to use a Judge Judy picture, and then I thought that would distract you since you love her so much.
I do like Judge Judy.
You sort of have an idolatry of Judge Judy, so I didn't want to encourage that. Since we're trying to get our act together. All right, now we're going to finish up chapter 4 with these verses that you will read to us.
Okay. Now listen to me. You say that today or tomorrow we will travel to a certain city where we will stay a year and go into business and make a lot of money. You don't even know what your life tomorrow will be. You are like a puff of smoke which appears for a moment and then disappears. What you should say is this: if the Lord is willing, we will live and do this or that. But now you are proud and you boast. All such boasting is wrong. So then, if we do not do the good we know we should do, we are guilty of sin.
Do you think that last verse is kind of a separate verse, 17?
Maybe so. In my translation, it says, anyone who knows the right thing to do and fails to do it commits sin.
So the sin of omission as well as commission. Now, I found this picture. You are like a puff of smoke, which appears for a moment and then disappears. Is that a good thing to remind yourself of every morning as you're getting ready for work? You're like a puff of smoke.
Well, and it harkens back to the Psalms, too, and we're but dew.
Or grass that dies, grass in the field that dies, yes.
Here one day and gone the next.
To just shrink in, what was that on our list?
Back to knowing our place in the world.
And a low self-focus.
The low ego. The quiet ego.
The
low
quiet
self-focus
ego,
and the
yes.
quiet ego.
That's what this is. You're like a puff of smoke.
And the part about I'm going to do this, that played a big part in my upbringing too. You would never say I'm going to do so and so. You always added Lord willing. I'm going on vacation next week, Lord willing.
So somebody did a good job of preaching from James, if that's the way you were raised.
Yes.
To always put that in.
It also had a tinge of superstition to it.
It was kind of like a rabbit's foot.
Yes, that if you didn't say that, then God wouldn't let you go on vacation because you should have said that.
So you were manipulating God. You were manipulating God. And
as we so often try to do.
So yes, it's the little rabbit's foot you pull.
Yep.
Lord willing.
Lord willing.
And the creek don't rise. Very, very important words, don't you think?
Yes.
From James.
That quiet ego is what stood out to me the most throughout all of this.
That's what we'll carry with us.
Humility, listening to other people, not having ourselves at the center of attention, to put God at the center. That's a game changer.
This is good. I'm going to go back and look at these slides again.
Okay. Now?
Not that I'm the one. Yes, let's start from the beginning until we get this right. So we only have one more chapter in James.
Yeah.
And this has been a nice, challenging refresher.
It has.
And let me tell you one quote to finish.
Okay.
And this is from my spiritual formation.
Oh, I do like that.
Western asceticism. A brother asked Abba Sisuus, I long to guard my heart. The old man said to him, and how can we guard the heart if our tongue leaves the door of the fortress open? We're going back to the tongue.
Yep.
Do you like the tongue teaching the best? Quick to listen, slow to speak, slow to anger.
I think so.
That would be a good T-shirt.
Oh, it would.
Wouldn't it? Maybe we could offer it. Available only at All Church
Sunday School.
Now we're going to become a business.
Of
and then we
$19.95.
can. I'm doing exactly what James said not to do. And after we sell the T-shirts.
We'll make a lot of money. Oh, you're just a puff of smoke.
I am a puff of smoke. And this puff of smoke thanks you for being with us for this conversation.
Thank you so much.
And read chapter 5, and we'll look forward to that conversation. God bless you and keep you.
Take care.